Well, hello to anybody who is viewing. And My name is Steve Wittgenstein, and this is the fourth installment of a series of videos that I'm putting together that I call Writing the Ozarks, in which I talk with other writers who live in the Ozarks, who write about the Ozarks, or in one or another way based there. Um, this evening, I'm talking with Agnes Vojta, who lives in Rolla and writes poetry. This is the moment when her third book is about to come out, or has come. Fourth book.
Fourth,
I'm sorry, fourth book. I, I missed one somewhere in there. So, welcome, Agnes. Thanks for joining us.
thanks for having me, Steve. Excited to be here.
Great. Um, so, since I missed one of the books, tell me what are the four books that you have
Um,
published?
that was Porous Land. That was my first one, came out in 2019. The Eden of Perhaps 2020. A Coracle for Dreams in 2022. And then this new one is called A Love Song to Gravity. It just came
Okay.
out in Stubborn.
I'd forgotten that first one. That's what I was just rereading the Eden of Perhaps this last couple of days, just reminding myself of your style and things like that. And your poetry is tends to be, I would say relatively short poems, but they often um, take on a subject and then really explore it within a fairly short span of time. So you pack a lot into uh, the, the comparatively short length of the poems. Since the name of the series is Writing the Ozarks, I wonder if I could get you to just talk about how you define the Ozarks and what makes it a significant region in your mind.
Okay, how I define the Ozarks. I mean, in Rolla, and so I think I'm a little bit south, it's a little bit north of where the Ozarks actually start. So we're right on the edge. I see it as the region that spans southern Missouri, northern Arkansas. Strictly speaking, I know the Ozarks extend a little bit into Oklahoma and Illinois. I have not explored those parts. So in my mind, it's northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, the limestone dolomite geology with all the karst features, the all the singing, losing streams, and the sinkholes and the caves. And actually, the title of porous land literally refers to the karst and the porosity and the losing streams. So that is very literal.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think any region is significant in its own way, but the Ozarks are one of the oldest mountain regions in the US. So it's 500 million years older than the Appalachians, which is also why they're quite withered down because they're so old. And they're the largest mountain region between the Appalachians and the Rockies. And so it's the only place in the Midwest that is really mountainous and has a completely different feel from from the Midwest. And I think that's also affecting the people who settled there. So the Ozarks as the western end point of a series of eastward migrations when the white settlers that moved in mainly of British origins, Irish, Scottish. You can still hear that in the folk music today. Many of them actually came from Appalachia and then settled first in the more fertile bottomlands on the rivers and the creeks, and then later in the more rugged terrain up there in the Boston Mountains. And I think this isolation and this remoteness also affects the way people are. So there's still a little bit of a stubborn independence, and you even today you hear that even on social media when the locals talk about the way they're doing things. So it's also culturally very a very interesting area.
Now, as anyone who reads the book jacket on your any of your books will quickly discover you were not native to the Ozarks. You came here from elsewhere. I'm wondering, what did you notice about the place immediately, or what interested you about it when you first arrived, and has your opinion of it changed in any ways?
That's a really good question. So, before I'm originally from Germany, and before coming to Missouri, I have lived in the West. I've lived in California and in Oregon. I'm very familiar with the landscapes in the West. And when I first moved here to the Ozarks, I was unimpressed because um, compared to the West, the Ozarks are lacking that dramatic scale. So the large elevation differences are absent. There are no vast swaths of slick rock desert. And instead, the Ozarks reminded me very much of home, the landscape near in the area where I grew up, near Dresden and Saxony, and also in Thuringia, where my grandma lived and where we spent the summers. So lots of green, rolling hills, gentle, inviting, well vegetated landscape. The one big difference, of course, is that we have much a higher population density in Germany, and that there is a town every 2 miles.
Yeah,
Um, but I started hiking right away when we moved here, and my appreciation for the Ozarks grown over time. So I think the Ozarks don't leave you awestruck at the first glance. You have to really spend time with the land and become familiar with the details. It's a landscape that invites you to look at the details, look closer. I started learning about the geology, about the plants. I actually took a field class last summer on Ozark vegetation. And I always feel the more you become familiar with a place, the more um, you can appreciate it. And I really fell in love with the Ozarks through the rivers. We don't have anything comparable back home. And I
yeah.
started kayaking, and so that's something that's really special. And actually, I've lived here now almost as long as I've lived in Germany in total. So it's kind of my second home.
You're an Ozarker after all, then.
Yeah.
I guess so. Um, I wanted to give you the opportunity to read some of your poems from the new collection, which is a love song to gravity. And um, for those of you who are viewing live, uh, I've placed a link to the bookshop.org order form in the chat box, so be sure to check that. And also Agnes's website, there's a link there. If you're watching on YouTube, they'll be down in the comments section, so be sure to scroll the comments down to find how you can obtain a copy of the new book, and also to visit the website where there's links to all the books. So anyway, um, have you picked out some poems that you'd like to read?
Yes, I have. So I want to start with the poem that gave the book the title, and that's the first poem in the collection. It's entitled "The River is the Love Song Water Sings to Gravity." Follow the current. The trees bow in reverence, touch the water like prayers. The river is the love song water sings to gravity. Springs seep from bluffs, rivulets tickle the stream, fern and moss hang heavy, the hills are a green jungle, you can lose yourself. Carry only the necessities, notice how little you need, ferry only what belongs here. Thoughts can weigh you down or make you drown. So that's the opening poem. And the
Mhm.
collection is a mix. Some poems are nature poems and poems about places in the Ozarks. And for today, I've chosen some of those to read for you. The poem also deals with grief. I wrote many of the poems after my father passed away, and so there are some poems in there that speak to that. And then also that dichotomy, this straddling two culture, like being at home here and still having home and culture back home. My mother is still living there. And so some of the poems deal with the traveling home and experiencing um, a home that I've left many, many years ago. So I think I'll never stop processing the whole immigration issue. But today I've picked some poems that are more nature and Ozark focused. This one is called Tell the Bees. I kneel in last year's leaves to photograph the rue anemone on their slender stems. Take the same pictures each year. Things deserve to be honored every time they emerge, you once said. I pay homage to the fiddlehead ferns coiled tightly with expectation. The zebra swallowtail who unfolds his wings in a prayer to spring. The microbes in the soil are busy with their invisible work. The earth did not stop turning when your heart stopped beating. Today I folded my arms around your widow, held her fragile frame. I knew no words of consolation, and yet the trees release clouds of pollen into a wondrous blue sky. The white plumes of the blossoms beckon the bees. Folk wisdom says one must tell the bees of a death, hang the hives with black cloth, and sing to them. I hope someone did.
Wow, that's a powerful poem. That's terrific. Oh, wow.
Thank
That's
you.
a moving uh, poem, and it moves from place to place. So you know, expeditiously. That's really, I mean, you cover a lot of ground in that poem. That's something else. Thank you for that one.
Shall I
Got
read a
another
couple
one?
more?
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a couple. There's three short ones that are really about places here in the Ozarks. The old ferry. Like a beached whale, she lies on the shore. The motor hangs down her side like a limp fin. The brass bell dulled like a lifeless eye. The ferryman has crossed over the final river. He is not coming back. Pioneer Cemetery. The path is overgrown with river oats and briars. Few come here. A row of sandstone slabs, tinged green by time, tilted by the weight of decades. No names, no dates, no records of lives faded into history. Only the oaks stand watch, and in the spring, anemones adorn the ground. Bonanza Mine. Bluffs loom forbidding. Water pools a toxic shade of turquoise. Two wooden beams hold up the roof. Others rot below. A heap of rubble excavated on the quest for ore. A rusty pipe. Wreckage of a claim abandoned. Caves yawn. Dark tunnels burrow into the belly of the mine. I don't care to explore. Let the bats sleep. So I have a lot
That's
of
good.
poems about abandoned places. There is something really intriguing about seeing where people tried to make a living and then left, and then you
Uh-huh.
wonder what became of them and what drove them to move there and what drove them to move away.
Yeah.
So
I'm guessing that that ferry is the one at Acres. Is that the ferry you were
that's the
seeing
ferry.
and
That
sort
is
of,
the ferry and the ferryman, the family who ran the ferry, the two men, they both passed away during
yeah,
COVID
yeah.
illness.
So it sort of kind of fits in with that same theme.
Yeah,
Um, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about your poetic process and how you light upon a subject and how you sort of decide how to treat it. One thing I noticed when I was rereading Eden of Perhaps was that they often start or some the nature poems in particular would start with some kind of observational element, but then often would turn more uh, philosophical or meditative in sometimes that kind of unexpected way. Um, I wonder if that's is that's how your mind works, or whether that's something that you're sort of following as a an intention to achieve something, or what? How do you see your writing?
I think it's more organic. So I feel a poem needs to go beyond the mere observation to it
Hmm.
needs to contain something that makes it relatable to another person, has some to have some kind of universality in its message. And sometimes it's the nature that gives me the metaphor that allows me to express something that I can't otherwise put into words. And then the image itself is the metaphor that carries the meaning, and it doesn't really need much interpretation. And sometimes the observation is the jump off point that gets me to thinking about something. So I feel the poet has to just add something beyond a mere narrative through I don't mean adding by tucking on an aphorism or some philosophical musings at the end, because that is clumsy and that's not what it's about. So that has to grow organically out of the observation, and you just shape in your word choices and in the sounds you shape that so that it carries that additional level of meaning. But I don't go into, oh, now I want to write a poem about such and such philosophical concept, and let's go look in nature where I can find a good metaphor. It just happens
Yeah.
organically. I just being out and about and seeing a lot
Yeah,
of
there
things.
has to be a certain amount of serendipity to the operation, otherwise it doesn't
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, as it happens, I am aware that your day job, so to speak, is as a scientist and as a teacher of science. Do you think that might inform your perspective in an unusual way, or
Um,
how do you see those elements competing or combining, or
Oh,
what?
definitely not competing, but
Hmm.
if I don't know if it affects my writing a lot, but one thing, I do have an analytical mind and I want to know how things work. So when I learn about something, I want to delve into the details. So when I see the plants, I want to learn how they belong in the families and about their morphology and about their physiology. So that's probably the scientist in me. And I do have a few sciency poems that where I write about topics that maybe wouldn't occur to a non-scientist. So in the book there is a poem about cleaning silver by using the different uh, affinities of like sulfur to silver and aluminum, which is a very sciencey topic, but it gives a beautiful metaphor for other stuff. So I think being a scientist just affects the way my brain works.
Yeah.
So I'm a very structured person. I am very
Hmm.
analytical, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
maybe don't have that
Uh, the,
artistic brain.
yeah, just, I mean, just the title itself, "A Love Song to Gravity," is a kind. Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of such a physics sort of title to it. Of like, who would think to write a love
Yeah.
song to gravity? I mean, I know.
Well, so I have to give a nod to Francis Ponge, who has a beautiful poem about water, and that is actually the epigraph to the book. There is a quote, and I put the original French, and I've translated it. So, the quote by Francis Ponge about from his water poem is, one could almost say that water is mad because of its hysterical need to obey only gravity, which possesses it like a fixed idea. So
Oh,
I'm not the only person who made that connection.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's nifty. I mean, when I first saw the title of the new book, I thought, ah, that's that's so appropriate. It seemed like such an appropriate title for you.
Yeah, there's actually, I think, five or so poems in there that have something to do with gravity. Five or six. So, yeah.
I don't live in Rolla, of course, but I get to visit Rolla periodically, and one thing I've noticed is that there seems to be a pretty thriving spoken word scene going on down there, which I think you are much responsible for, the poetry at the pub that
Yes.
happens pretty
Yeah.
regularly. And it's always so heartwarming to see people sort of uplifting other poets and other writers in ways that bring them up. How did you get started with poetry at the pub, and how long has it been going on, and what can you tell us about it?
Okay, thanks for asking about that. So I started with the first events in 29. So I have not been part of any poetry scene for long. So my first time reading out loud at an open mic was in 2018, and that was in Bell at the Osage Arts Community, and that's where I met a bunch of poets. And so in 2019, I invited um, a few people down to Rolla and had a reading at on campus, and then I decided we should also have a reading at the public house, so it's not the stiff campus atmosphere and people can have a beer. The series started in 2019, and then we had another event in 2020, and then you all know what happened. Then there was the big shutdown, and we didn't restart until after 2022. So that was when I felt comfortable hosting. I mean, I went to events earlier than that, but with hosting, you always feel responsible for the safety of the audience. So we had a rather long hiatus and started in 2022 in February, and we now have monthly events, except for maybe a short summer break. So this summer we're pausing in June, but we have monthly events. We have typically a featured reader, and then run an open mic, and that has grown really nicely. So I have now people contact me that they are coming through and whether they can read. And so yeah, if any of you who are listening to this, if you want to read in Rolla, normally we have our events on the third Tuesday of the month. But if you are just coming through and traveling and you want to read, just send me a message and we can see if we can work that out. The pub has been really good to work with. They've been really good hosts, and even now that they have construction going on, we are now reading in the actual brewery between the tanks because they have closed down the main portion of the pub for construction, but um, um, they're very flexible, giving us a space. And
Uh-huh.
it's a really nice community. So we have people that come down from Columbia, from Jeff City, from Bell, and for the people here in Rolla, it's I think the first time that there is a regular spoken word outlet. I know Arts Rolla has been hosting a once a year thing for many years, but so yeah, this has grown really nicely, and I'm very happy
Great.
about that.
There's something about the experience of poetry spoken that makes it so present. I mean, I love to read poetry, but it's a whole different kind of animal to speak it aloud and to experience it spoken aloud too.
And it
Or it
also
seems
gives
to me
people
that way.
Yeah, also gives people a way to actually talk to each other and interact with each other. So I find it very important for community building and sharing opportunities and just having support. Because being a writer can be a really lonely business.
Yeah. Before we run out of time, I also want to mention to all our viewers, current and future, that not only can you find Agnes's work in her own books, but there's a collection called Wild Muse, nature poetry from the Ozarks, that contains a substantial number of your poems, as well as, I think there's a total of 8 poets. If memory serves,
Yes.
I meant to look
I think total
and
of
double
nine.
check that, but
There's nine, and each of us has
okay.
20 to 24 poems, a whole chapter.
Right. Which is absolutely a terrific collection that should be on anybody's bookshelf who loves poetry at all, and nature poetry in general, or Ozarks nature poetry specifically, because it gives a great sampling of styles and approaches. So
That was
uh,
a big project that
that
I
was a
thank
terrific
to Phil
book.
Howardson from Corner Post Press for inviting me to be part of that.
Absolutely. Would you like to finish off with one more poem for us? Have you got something
Sure.
to read for us?
Now I have to find one. Oh, yes, I will read a poem that, since Steve mentioned the Wild Muse, so we had a get together at the Ozark Research Field Station of the university to do poetry reading. And with for the Wild Muse people, and almost everybody was there. So most of the authors came, and it was very odd reading because it was at the time when people would have had to leave Rolla, there was a tornado watch. And so we were just the poets and the poets' spouses and the caretaker of the field station. And I think there were 3 people in the audience besides that. Oh, we had such a wonderful time, and I wrote a poem about this, and it is called Poetry Reading with Approaching Storm. We switched off the phones when they began blaring weather warnings. The clouds and the wind spoke clearly enough. The sudden rush of cool air, the ominous darkening of the sky, the breeze that picked up papers and last year's leaves. We grasped our books tighter, felt the first sprinkles. Determined, we held out until heavy drops splashed and we rushed laughing inside the old farmhouse. Settled in the snug room with its dark beams and whitewashed walls, we read on, with the door open to the drumming of rain, and later the frog calls and the spring smell of wet earth.
What a great poem, and what a great event. That sounds like some of those things that couldn't possibly be planned in advance or duplicated. How wonderful. Well, we're almost out of time, so I don't want to have it to cut us off before we say thank you. Agnes, it's been wonderful to talk with you, and I really love your new poems that you've read for us. I can't wait to get my own copy of the book and read them again. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, and you send me your address, and I'll send you a copy of the book as soon as I get copies. And if anybody wants a copy directly from me, um, yeah, hit me up. I am awaiting the printers to finally meet on printing my order, and then I should have
Well,
it shortly. So thank you so
the
much,
last
Steve, for
step in the
having me.
process, waiting for the darn book to arrive. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for watching.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye bye.